Well, this is why everyone hates the mainstream media. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Breaking Brad, my series where I react to breaking news and viral moments in short form. Today we're going to talk about a scandal at the New York Times, once considered America's paper of record, now considered something else. Anyway, the context here is that the independent journalist Bari Weiss, who founded the Free Press after infamously leaving the New York Times opinion page in a scandal because she defended the publication of a Republican senator's op-ed and her colleagues were terrible to her. Well, she just got appointed as the editor-in-chief of CBS News, and Paramount bought her startup, the Free Press, for a whopping $150 million. And frankly, I like Bari. We disagree on a fair number of things. I've written for the Free Press, I think, once. So huge financial conflict of interest there. They sent me a couple $100 for that. But anyway, I don't have super strong feelings on that, on the story itself, other than like, good for her. She got canceled, and then the media ecosystem has kind of gone full swing. And I hope that she brings in new voices and more diversity of views into CBS News. But yeah, I don't have super strong feelings on that. But the media is in meltdown mode. And the New York Times just got caught in some of the most dishonest and nasty coverage of Bari that just perfectly typifies everything that's wrong with mainstream media and why they are losing the public's trust rapidly, and why people like Bari Weiss were popular in the first place as independent voices. So let's look at this article, and it's really quite bad. There's no other way to say this. It's titled "How Bari Weiss Won." At the Free Press, she battled wokeness in scare quotes and buddied up with billionaires. Now she's the editor-in-chief of CBS News. And this is by their media correspondent, Jessica Testa. Now, we're going to get to a pretty, I would call it a lie, actually. I think it's such a significant stripping of context. I think it's a lie. But we're going to get to the big lie in a moment. But first, I just want to read you a couple funny quotes from this article that show how out of touch this New York Times writer is. They ousted good people for fake thought crimes and tried to ruin their reputations and their lives, Ms. Weiss said of the far left during that February speech. Fact check, true, and that's me there. Now here's the New York Times. Their insanity, she said, included acknowledging indigenous land, adding pronouns to email signatures, and wanting to abolish prisons and police. Yes. That is all insane and cringe. Especially, yes, in fact, New York Times media correspondent, abolishing prisons and police is insane. The fact that that's in scare quotes is simply diabolical. And we have one more quote here. First, guys, do subscribe, comment, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, this writer writes of Bari Weiss, quote, "She is known more for wanting to rid the world of so-called wokeness than for promoting journalistic traditions." Excuse me? I love how there's no at all grappling with or thought that perhaps wokeness is at odds with journalistic traditions. A great example of this is literally the scandal that got Bari Weiss, I think, finally pushed her over the edge and had her resign from the New York Times. Basically, they did something horrible and scandalous, and they published an opinion article by a Republican senator saying that Trump should send in the troops during the Black Lives Matter riots, which low-key maybe he should have. But anyway, all these woke New York Times staffers started tweeting about how the publication of that article put Black staff in danger. Seriously. And so, yes, actually doing the newspaper's job, which is airing mainstream viewpoints from across the political spectrum of important people in America, that is the journalistic tradition, and then wokeness is the attack on it. So resisting the woke takeover of media is trying to restore journalistic traditions and standards. This person just does not get it. But here's the part that gets horrible and indefensible. Let me read you the end of the article. The difference lies in how much Ms. Weiss talks about her personal beliefs in public and which ones she is willing to debate over and with whom. I know that there are some people in this room who don't believe that my marriage should have been legal, Ms. Weiss told the Federalist Society, an influential conservative legal group, in 2023. And that's okay, because we're all Americans who want lower taxes. That's the end of the article. And the context is, of course, that Bari Weiss is married to a woman. She was speaking to a conservative group. So this is portrayed as if she is just some shill for the rich who is willing to like betray the LGBT community because of lower taxes is all she cares about. In fact, another New York Times reporter shared, not the one who authored it, shared fantastic story with a fantastic kicker, with this exact screenshot. The masses continue to be mired in the culture wars that Bari covers, but elites at the top are self-aware enough to know and promote class consciousness within their ranks. So they are very clearly pushing a narrative here that she's some kind of shill for the rich, and all the culture war stuff is just a distraction, and she's just doing the propaganda to the masses, and that's why she does horrible things like has a podcast published that humanizes J.K. Rowling and other such offenses. But the problem is, well, one, that narrative itself is debatable, but this dishonesty of this article is breathtaking. If you watch the actual Federalist Society speech that is being quoted here, this was a joke. This was a laugh line. She was making fun of the idea that all they have in common is lower taxes. On the contrary, what she says in the actual full speech is something different. In recognizing allies, I'll be an example. I am a gay woman who is moderately pro-choice. I know there are some in this room who do not believe my marriage should have been legal, and that's okay, because we are all Americans who want lower taxes. Next paragraph. But seriously. Yes, it was literally a joke, and they just took the quote at face value and used it as the end of their story, crapping on and misportraying Bari Weiss. But seriously, I'm here because I know that in the fight for the West, I know who my allies are. And my allies are not the people who, looking at facile external markers of my identity, one might imagine them to be. My allies are people who believe that America is good, that the West is good, that human beings, not cultures, are created equal, and that saying so is essential to knowing what we are fighting for. America and our values are worth fighting for, and that is the priority of the day. So what she was very clearly doing is making a joke about kind of the left-wing caricature that, oh, we all just want lower taxes for the rich, and actually saying that she views unlikely allies in many conservatives against anti-Western left-wing radicalism. Now, you might not love that. You might disagree with that. We could talk about that. But to say, just to take that quote and present it with no context and not as the joke that it was, to make her seem like some shill for billionaires, I mean, I think it is so dishonest that it is either a lie or it is a gross dereliction of duty. I cannot really believe that a New York Times media reporter would not even look up a quote's context before using it in such a kind of takedown way against a public figure who's at the top of the news cycle right now. So there's only two explanations here. I think she just doesn't care. She knows that she can probably get away with this at the New York Times because whatever, I guess there's two sets of standards. One extremely rigorous set of standards about anything applying to Democratic figures or liberal figures. And then, of course, anything goes, kind of pretty close to anything goes when it comes to a perceived bad guy, a right-leaning person. And I just think it's disgraceful to like do her dirty with this kind of basically fabrication or dishonest misquoting. And then it is so karmic almost to do it as part of a story where you're talking about why mainstream media failed and this independent startup succeeded to the point where now mainstream media people are realizing, crap, we need to change and bring her back in. Well, the New York Times is just like, you know what we should really do? We should remind everyone why we hate them, why they all hate the media, and why we are in fact failing and losing people's trust because we are so obsessed with partisanship and ideology that we are just blatantly dishonest on the regular. Now, we will wait and see if this New York Times media reporter issues a correction or an apology of any kind. I'll let y'all know if that happens. but I would not recommend waiting on it to happen or holding your breath, because you might pass out. What do you guys think? Do you see this as dishonest as I do? And let me know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, yada, yada, yada. Let me know if you're enjoying the short form content. But if you're interested in my longer form content, be sure to subscribe to the Bread vs. Everyone podcast, where I cover internet insanity and social media trends, all from an independent perspective. The link to check out the podcast is in the description to all the podcast platforms. And with that, guys, we'll talk again real soon.